Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, brothers and sisters. Welcome to this live broadcast from the IMAN Center in Kirkland. Today is August 22nd, Saturday, and the 3rd of Muharram. We will begin our program this evening with the recitation of the Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقال الله لا تتخذوا إلهين اثنين إنما هو إله واحد فإياي فارهبون وله ما في السماوات والأرض وله الدين واصبا أفغير الله تتقون وما بكم من نعمة فمن الله ثم إذا مسكم الضر فإليه تجأرون ثم إذا كشف الضر عنكم إذا فريق منكم بربهم يشركون ليكفروا بما آتيناهم فتمتعوا فسوف تعلمون صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Surah Al-Nahl, verses 51 to 55. In the name of God, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy. God said, "Do not take two gods, for he is the one God. I alone am the one that you should hold in awe. Everything in the heavens and the earth belongs to him. Everlasting obedience is his right. Will you heed anyone other than God? Whatever good things you possess come from God, and when hardships afflict you, it is to him alone you cry out for help. Yet when he has relieved you of your hardship, lo and behold, some of you attribute partners to your Lord. Let them show ingratitude for the favors we have shown them. Enjoy your brief time. Soon you will know." Sadaqallahul Aliyyul Azim.
Welcome again to this live broadcast from the Iman Center in Kirkland. We continue our program with the Saws and Marthia selected for this evening.
بر محمد آل محمد صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. جب حر کا گناہ شاہ امم بخشا جب کا گناہ شاہ امم بخشا قطرے کو شراب بیر کرم بخشا گردوں سے ندائی کے گردوں سے ندائی کے اے پیارے حسین بخشا جسے تو نے اسے ہم نے بخشا جب کا گناہ بر محمد آل محمد صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد.
We continue now with a recitation of the Marthia that has been selected for the occasion today. And today we will be remembering a brave warrior of Islam by the name of Hur. We will hear more about him inshallah later on.
بر محمد آل محمد صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد. شمع کا شان دی ہے رخ تاباں کا دل سے پروانہ ہے ہر صاحب ایمان کا لے گیا گوئے سعادت وہ ہے میدان کا حور فردوس کا مہمان ہے ثنا خان کا خوب سمجھے جسے فرزند نبی خوب ہے وہ جو نظر کردہ محبوب ہے محبوب ہے وہ نہ ہمیں ماہ محرم کی جو ظاہر ہوئی شان مہلت ایک شب کی ملی شہ کو ہٹی فوج تمام اپنے خیموں میں کیا وہاں کے رئیسوں نے مقام رونق افزا ہوئے ناموں سے محمد مہمان ام کلثوم کو منہ اشکوں سے دھوتے دیکھا صحن میں زینب ناشاد کو روتے دیکھا نئی دعوت تھی نئی مہمانی زرد تھے آلے محمد کے رخ نورانی شرم سے سر کو جھکائے تھا نبی کا जानी नन्हे बच्चों में ये था शोर के पानी पानी बोलने की थी ना ताकत किसी में पारे में कोई आगोश में गश था कोई गहवारे में शमे का शान नई दी है रुख ताबा का बर मोहम्मद आले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद.
Once again, for those who have just joined us, welcome everybody to this live broadcast from the Iman Center in Kirkland on this third day of Muharram, the eve of the 4th of Muharram. We will now continue the program with our guest speaker, Sayyid Hassan Rizvi, delivering the lecture for tonight. Please welcome him with loud salawat.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين رحمة للعالمين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا وطبيب ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين المكرمين الخيرين الفاضلين سيدنا الصادقين سيما بقية الله في الأرضين روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء واللعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Last night, we continued our discussion about identity. After going through the difference between humans and animals, talking about our ability as humans to self-identify, we talked about this identity crisis of choosing whether to be American Muslim or Muslim American. And we said that ideally, we should be identifying truly as Muslims. We're not adding any sort of other feature, not an ethnic attribute, country of origin, occupation, color, political leaning, anything like that. Just the word Muslim itself, deep down, should explain and express our true identity. And what that means is an individual seeks what Allah wants. They behave according to what Allah demands. They speak only in a way that would please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then we said, many of us claim that we are Muslim. We believe in God, we believe in the Day of Judgment, the prophets, the imams, etc. Yet we still end up failing and falling and sinning. Why is that? Why are we having this identity crisis? Why do we lose our identity? Well, we examined this one narration which said that a person sins, a Muslim sins, and at that time when they sin, they perform and commit kufr. At that moment, they actually disbelieve in Allah. When we have all of these choices in front of us, we know what is right and what is wrong. The moment we decide to do something which displeases Allah, the moment we decide to leave what's good, leave obedience of Allah and move towards disobedience, it's as if subconsciously we are saying, Allah, for this one moment, I don't care about you, na'udhu billah, I don't believe in you, and I consider myself to be the criteria of truth. I'm going to do what I want. And this is the problem that we have to figure out, identify, and figure out what are we supposed to do about this. We saw in Surah Al-Hashr, chapter 59, verse 19. Allah says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Don't be like those who forgot about Allah. Because then Allah made them forget their own identity. They forgot who they really were, and we would forget who we really are. These are the ones, these kinds of individuals become fasiqun, open sinners, transgressors, those who disobey and go against what they should understand to be true. And now, of course, our question is, how do people like you and I, who, again, claim to believe in God in 1 second, and then the very next second we disobey Him? Why are we doing this? Why do we have this identity loss? Why are we having this crisis of identity? Before we answer that question, I wanted to jump to one of the questions that was submitted yesterday. So the person has asked and said, on the topic of conflict between culture and religion, I would like Hassan to give examples beyond just American or West. So if you remember the example we gave yesterday of showing how our Muslim identity supersedes everything and should supersede everything if we truly are Muslim, is when we see that there's a clash at some point. So the example we gave was about the notion of freedom of speech, where the Western notion, specifically the American notion, includes the freedom to offend. That's enshrined within the Bill of Rights and the freedom of speech. Whereas in Islam, you do not have the right to say what you want. It's controlled so that we can engage in speech which is conducive to spiritual growth. So there's a difference in approach over here. Whereas in the Western context, people can draw cartoons and insult one another. Islam doesn't allow this sort of behavior. So then the questioner continues and says, the conflict is relevant for all countries, whether Western or Eastern. That's true. Yeah. This is not just a American Muslim thing or West-East thing. Even those of you who practice more Eastern cultures and give that more importance than Islam would still fall into this dilemma and identity crisis as well. So the questioner continues, while America is where we are, expanding it will make it feel like less of a East-West thing and more of using faith to guide your personal behavior. For example, I have found more Islamic values in Western culture, meaning what you say, being on time, justice, than Eastern or Middle Eastern culture. I think reframing it that way will help with the conversation between kids and parents as well. Okay. So we can give an example of any culture. Obviously, yes, we wanted to give the example of American culture because there are many individuals who self-identify, meaning deep down, again, we don't care about what you write on your Facebook post necessarily or something you may just kind of arbitrarily or superficially say to a friend or a classmate or something. No, we're talking about that question deep down of how you really boil down your identity, your framework, your paradigm for reality and life. And we showed last night why adding any sort of country of origin doesn't make any sense. Because, as we had said, if you're adding something to Islam, then by default you're saying Islam is incomplete. And this would make our understanding of Islam problematic. Now, if you don't believe Islam's complete, then of course, yes, you want to add in something that makes sense. But most of us do believe that Islam is a complete way of life and it encompasses everything that we need. From sleeping habits to eating habits, speaking, behavior, ethics, philosophy, spirituality, politics, every single thing is included within Islam, right? Either directly or indirectly. Now, if somebody doesn't believe that, then yes, it would make sense to bring something else into Islam, to add another trait or characteristic or an adjective to make their life philosophy complete. But again, for the example here, about where could somebody from the East say, for example, they are Pakistani Muslims or Indian Muslims or, again, African Muslims, whatever. I'll give the example of Desi culture because that's something that I've lived myself, so I can give that as a personal example. we are taught in our Desi culture, many of you, I'm sure, are listening who are Desi as well. You've learned this as well. If you host a dinner, somebody comes over, whether it's a majlis, niyaz, you're giving tabarruk, whatever it is, or if you're just having somebody over for lunch or dinner, when they come and the food's on the table and you're all there, what is the rule in a Desi household? What is the culture? What is the custom? It's that, well, you are the guest, you should start first. So you let the guest begin. And even in some extreme circumstances, which is the way I was raised, we're not even allowed to touch the food until every single other person has begun. If we were to sponsor a majlis or a milad or give out food like that, then I was taught, don't even touch the food while you're there. Wait till all of the guests leave, then and only then are you allowed to touch the food when it's just family present. But let's go back to the dinner example. So I was taught, as many of you, let the guests start, you shouldn't start. They're your guests, honor them. And then let them keep on eating after you, right? Let them continue to eat after you. So sometimes you don't eat at all, and sometimes you have very, very little and you let the guests, have more. And to me, that felt rational, right? It made sense. It was logical. Yeah, common sense. You guys, you're the guests. You should start first, and you keep on going. Don't worry about me. I won't even try the food. Many of you who are aware of the rulings in Islam about food, drink, and the etiquette of serving and hosting know that this is completely antithetical to what Islam advises. Islam advises that the host is the one that actually should start. And the last person to end should also be the host as well. So this is literally flying in the face of Desi culture. Right? So we have a clash of cultures again. Now, if somebody in this moment decides, well, look, I've been raised a certain way, I'm going to do that. Then what are you doing? You're taking Islam, you're taking Allah, and you're throwing it aside for your ethnic background, your cultural background. And that's, okay, maybe you're not doing something haram. Now, this is assuming that the thing you're doing is not haram. This situation is about recommendations. So maybe you won't go to hell for it, but we're talking about what's going on deep down inside. Deep down inside, that sort of person is saying, my culture is more important than Allah. Na'udhu billah. So this can happen in any sort of framework, right? Whether it's East, whether it's the West, whether it's America, Canada, anything. The whole purpose is that you have to strip away all of these things, and the only thing that should remain is Islam. The only thing that should remain is God. Now, sometimes God maybe gives us permission to act in a way that we want, right? If you want to mourn in Urdu, mourn in Urdu. If you want to recite poetry in Arabic, do it in Arabic, Farsi, whatever. Whatever language you want, go ahead. But when it comes time to pray salah, that has to be recited in Arabic. You and I don't get to pick and choose what we want. If God gives us the freedom, then fine. Otherwise, for our own benefit, God has chosen for us to do certain things and to keep away from certain things. This is the whole point that we wanted to get across with this idea. So hopefully that example helps. Now, about this comment at the end, though, about Islam, this person has found more Islamic values in Western culture, I would, respectfully disagree with that. And now, maybe there are certain instances that might be true, but I wouldn't just completely say that Western values are automatically quantitatively better than Eastern values. I don't think so. One example I think clearly is the close-knit communities and the tight-knit families that we have. In the West, the kind of norm is to kick your kids out very early on, to make them independent on their own, put your elders in a nursing home. Whereas in the East, alhamdulillah, we are still very bound and connected to our families. We still have people who are living in these multi-generational homes. And they are very, very close-knit. And many people are kind of disgusted by the idea of putting their elders their parents in a nursing home. And they said, no, unless it's an extreme condition, then fine, we'll do that. But otherwise, we should be the ones to take care of those who took care of us for so long. So there are some, minor points here and there. And we should not just be completely enamored and we kind of fetishize the West like this. This is not the proper way to think. And inshallah, maybe in the Q&A or some other time, we can go into more details about that, inshallah. Please recite as-salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now back to our topic. So I mentioned last night, we wanted to go through an example of identity loss. That's the question we want to answer tonight. How did we lose our identity? What exactly happened, and what are the factors that lead to identity loss? I want to believe in God. I think I do. But in the moment of sin, I decide to toss God aside and do what I want. Why am I doing that? Hopefully this example, the example of Superman, will help us illustrate that point. So again, I said, for the youth or any elders who may know about Superman, this hopefully will click with you. If not, then I'm sure you can tune out for the next 30 minutes or so, inshallah. Okay. First question is this. Who is Superman? What is his real identity, his true identity? Now, again, normally if we were in person, I would give the opportunity for people to respond. So I don't know if you're responding, but some of you may say, oh, his real identity is that he is Clark Kent. Say, okay, where is he from? Clark Kent is from Smallville. Who are his parents? His parents are Jonathan and Martha Kent. Now, for those of you who have no idea about what Superman is or who he is, let me just give you some background so you're not completely lost in this discussion. Superman is a comic book character created by DC Comics. He has all these powers. He can fly, shoot lasers out of his eyes, super strength, super speed, this like very cold breath, etc. Right? Now, back to the analogy. So, many people would respond, his true identity is that he's Clark Kent, right? That's his real identity, mild-mannered reporter. We'd ask, okay, where he's from? You would say, he's from Smallville. But that wouldn't be his real identity, would it? Superman, now his origin story, is that he's not an Earthling. He's not a human. He's actually an alien from the planet Krypton. So, as a baby, his planet was being destroyed. His parents put him in a spaceship and sent him off before the planet was annihilated. And his ship happened to crash land on Earth, where he was raised by human parents, right? Jonathan and Martha Kent. And they gave him the name Clark Kent. So his actual true identity is that he's Kryptonian, not an Earthling. He's from Krypton. He's not from Smallville, Kansas. Next question is, when did Superman actually become Superman? He wasn't Superman from birth, right? He was being raised as Clark Kent. We see that while he's growing up, in high school is when he first starts to understand his powers, right? He tries to open a door and the door rips off. He wants to, run somewhere and he ends up running halfway across the state. So then he realizes that he has all these abilities. Now the problem is this, he doesn't automatically put on his suit and cape and go out flying and fighting crime and saving people. No. In fact, the first thing that happens to Clark, aka Kal-El, aka this future Superman, is that he starts doubting himself. He starts thinking, I don't want these abilities. Why? Because nobody else around him has powers. Nobody else can lift up cars and toss them across, miles away. Nobody else can, have bullets bounce off their chest. Nobody else can go flying around in the sky. So he's an abnormality. And who likes to be abnormal in a society? Definitely not Clark. All of his friends around him are human beings, right? They're not doing any of this stuff. So this causes Clark or Kal-El to reject his alien origin. Now, once he fully recognizes who he is as a alien, as a Kryptonian, sent down by his parents, that he has these abilities and that he can use them to save mankind, he embraces his real ideology, his real identity, puts on the cape, and becomes Superman, and then goes, and we know the future there in the story, right? Now, take that analogy, and let's apply it to us. If I were to ask you, where are you from? What would some of you answer? Some of you would say, okay, I'm from Seattle. Some of you may think, okay, I'm from Pakistan, from India, from Iraq, from Iran, from Afghanistan, from Africa. Right? You'll probably talk about your ethnic origin. But, or maybe some of you, if you want to be really clever, say, well, I'm from Earth, right? I'm a global human or something like that. We're going to say that all of these are incorrect. In the same way that saying that Superman's real identity is Clark Kent, that he's an Earthling, is incorrect, for us to say that we are from some sort of country of birth, we have some sort of ethnic background, or even identifying as American, all of these things are incorrect. Why? I'm going to give us a Quranic principle where Allah tries to remind us all the time of what our origin really is. And He gives us this reminder constantly. This reminder comes to us during the time of death. Whenever we hear about somebody dying, when we're with the departed, When we think about the death of an individual, we hear the announcement. What are we told to recite over and over and over again, out loud as a reminder of who we are, where we came from, and where we're going? We recite as Muslims what? We say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. That, without a doubt, absolutely, we belong and come from Allah. That is our origin. We are divine creatures. We are divine beings. We are godly creations. We are not, yes, we happen to be on earth right now. We happen to have been born in America or Canada or Africa or Pakistan, but that was in what they say superficial, haphazard. That doesn't really tell us about the nature of our soul. That's the real identity we need to understand. And then of Allah, in the second part of this, Allah says, وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. And sometimes people mistranslate this and say that we will return to Allah. That's not correct. The verse is saying that we are constantly going back towards Allah in every single moment of our existence. We are God's property. We came from Him. We are divine creatures. We have been put on this earthly realm, this material realm, the dunya. But every single moment we are moving back towards Him as well. He is the origin. He is the source. And therefore He also is the place where we will return. If we can keep that in mind, that will keep us in tune with our real identity. Understanding who our Creator is, understanding the one who has fashioned and shaped our soul, the one who has given us this fitra, this theomorphic nature, the aql, the intellect, our heart, all these faculties that you and I use to determine what is right and wrong. In order to do that, we need to recognize what is that barometer and who gave us that barometer. This doesn't come from our country of birth. This doesn't come from citizenship. It doesn't come from a passport. It doesn't come from any constitution. It doesn't come from Enlightenment philosophers. These ideas that we need to perfect our soul, to raise ourselves spiritually, can only come from Allah through the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salatu wassalam. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So no, we are not Americans. We're not Canadians. We're not British. We're not Norwegian. We're not African. We are not Iraqi, Iranian. This is not our real identity. We are not earthlings. That's also not our real identity. We are temporarily stationed on this world. We come from Allah as divine beings, pure immaterial beings with these greater faculties of understanding. We are here using this physical realm to improve ourselves. But don't confuse that with your real identity. We are divine beings. We are God's creations. We are these pure, immaterial creations of light. That's what we are. That's what the soul is. It happens to be connected with this body right now, but that's a temporary connection which will be cut off. We will be disconnected from this body at the time of death. This is why you see in so many narrations, the Ahlul Bayt are saying, the body, think about it as a transition period. This world is a transition period. It's a stop off. It's a service stop, a service area. It's like a hotel room you're staying at for a little while. Why do you claim property to this? Why do you claim that this is your home and your real identity? It's not. We are meant for higher things. And because most of us have forgotten about that, just like Kal-El forgot about his identity as being from Krypton and being Superman and having a job on Earth to help humanity, we have also forgotten what we're here for. We are not here to engage in materialistic desires. We are not here to act out our carnal whims and wants. We are here to perfect our soul and to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He has given us the exact criteria, the exact system that we need so that we can improve ourselves, so that we can destroy the ego and forget about all of these superficial, haphazard, nonsensical ideas in the world and focus on really what's important in our lives. Now, you may say, again, Hassan, that's not explaining why we've lost it though. If we really wanted to believe in Allah, then we should have that. In the same way Kal-El did, right? And Superman, Clark. What happened to him that has happened to us? What were the factors that took place in his life, which are analogous to our lives, which made us move away from true Islam, from real Islam, from our Islamic godly identity? So, there's a few different factors. I'll mention a couple just for tonight. inshallah. One is this. Who raised Kalel? Who raised him? He was raised by earthlings, Jonathan and Martha Kent. They were human beings. Those human beings with a human upbringing, of course, are going to raise Clark as if he's a human. They give him a human name, give him a human life, and give him human values, right? They're not going to prep him for saving the world. They're not going to give him the tools and the training that he needs to go out and fight crime. No, because they don't know about any of that. They don't have that experience. They don't have that lifestyle. In the same way, sometimes the factor which affects you and I is our upbringing, our tarbiyah. The way that you and I have been raised by our parents, and the way that you and I as parents are raising our children. This is one of the most common factors which causes a child or an individual to move away from Allah, to forget about God, to forget Islam, and to go towards un-Islamic or non-Islamic values. Why do you think that there's such a huge rise of atheism in our own communities? Is it because the atheists have something valuable to say? No, they don't. Their proofs are absolutely nonsensical, right? Their ideas are worthless. There's no basis for them to stand on. And their ideas have been nonsense through millennia, right? Nobody's given these atheists any sort of credence. But now, all of a sudden, given this modern world with, again, this freedom of speech and freedom of information and act, and everybody gets to say whatever they want and believe in whatever they want, then it becomes very easy for individuals to accept the ideas of, ignorant individuals and ignorant celebrity speakers, right? So people like Richard Dawkins or Christopher Hitchens or Stephen Hawking or Sam Harris or any of these famous atheists, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Dr. Lawrence Krauss, they say all they want to say about God and doesn't exist and blah, 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 blah. Our kids will read that, and even adults will read these things, they'll watch the YouTube clips, and they'll get convinced. Again, the arguments are completely unsound, but our kids are getting convinced. And you and I sometimes get convinced by it because we don't have the proper backing. We don't have the knowledge base to refute and object to these ideas. And that usually stems from an improper or incomplete and deficient upbringing. With all due respect to the parents of those who are listening, and with all due respect to those of you who are parents who are raising your kids, it's not easy to raise our children in a society like this, which puts such an emphasis on qualities and values that you and I do not agree with. There are many traits and ideas here that, are, in a sense, un-Islamic, that Islam does not agree with. And our kids are being taught this in schools. And their parents, again, as I think I've seen from some of the comments that have been being sent my way, it seems that many of the adults in the community, maybe some of the young adults as well, they buy into some of these ideologies as well, right? These kind of post-Enlightenment modernist ideas, popularized by famous thinkers like Descartes, Locke, Kant, etc., right? These famous post-Enlightenment or Enlightenment thinkers who have created this idea of modernism, right? This idea of liberalism and secularism, humanism. These are ideas which are very, very foreign to Islam, right? But this requires a whole separate discussion. I don't want to get into that. But many Muslims agree with these ideas and they inculcate their kids based on that. And then the question comes, why are they moving away from God? Well, because there's contradictory ideas that are coming in there. Why do you think so many kids, when they see the hypocrisy between one of their cultures and then their other culture, one identity and their other identity, right? One of those supposedly being Islam, they're going to get confused. That's obviously going to happen. And we gave very simple examples of, hosting somebody for food or freedom of speech. But things get much deeper than that. The whole notion of freedom, for example, of justice, of equality, right? Of economics, of politics, all of these topics require a proper discussion. And I know many of you are very, very opinionated, and that's good. And you're passionate. That's wonderful. Let's discuss. No problem. Let's, bounce ideas off of one another. But for those who have studied the history of the movement of what took place in the Middle Ages and Dark Ages, the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, post-Enlightenment, modern age, and then the postmodern age, which we're living in, if you see the underpinnings of what they're saying, there's no way that you can take these ideas and see that they work within an Islamic framework. They don't. And this is why you see such a rise and surge of atheistic belief, because the ideas which come out from the Enlightenment are not compatible with religion. That's why everybody thinks we're ridiculous for believing in God. Because through their scientific, materialistic, or scientistic modernist framework, religion's a joke. God is a joke, na'udhu billah. It's an opiate of the masses, according to Marx, for example, right? But again, that's more of a digression. I don't want to get in there. What does our Holy Prophet Muhammad say? Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Regarding us having the basic foundation of religious belief and believing in God, but then being changed by parents. He says in one famous narration, which is narrated by all schools of thought, he says, "Ma min mawludin illa yulad ala al-fitra." Every single child is born with this fitra. The basis that they have, the foundation that they're giving is the fitra. What is the fitra? It's a theomorphic disposition in nature. Everything we need in order to believe in God, to connect with God, to spiritually benefit from Him, to rise, to gain, to spiritually ascend, everything is put within our soul. It's all there. We've got the default, let's call it BIOS. We have the programming that we need to improve ourselves. فَأَبَوَاهُ يُوَهَّدَانُ أَوْ يُنصَرَانُ أَوْ يَمَجِّسَانُ. It's the parents of those children who make them into, let's say, Jews or Christians or some other faith. And this also applies for Muslims. Our children are put on a pure, ma'soom, immaculate, perfect fitrah. It's sometimes you and I, with our materialistic tendencies, our dunyawi tendencies, our un-Islamic, non-Islamic tendencies that we force down on our kids that push them away from God. Whether we're doing it consciously or unconsciously. This is one thing, the first factor that you and I have to be very, very careful of. And this is why one of the most important things in this day and age is for us to learn proper Islamic parenting. Islam has a lot to say about the approach to parenting in the 0 to 7 phase, the 7 to 14 phase, and the 14 to 21 phase. It's only now that quote-unquote modern developmental psychology and scholars in parenting are understanding the same dynamic. We had this, right, before, but unfortunately many of our speakers and scholars wouldn't address this. And now we see the effects, the detrimental effects, that many in the East were not given these Islamic parenting tips and guidelines, and unfortunately they raise their kids given a un-Islamic framework of abuse, of forcing your children to believe something when they didn't understand the reasoning behind it. There's a lot there, but that's for a separate session about Islamic parenting. So this was the first factor. The second factor is having irreligious family or irreligious friends. Another narration from the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Somebody asks him, according to this narration, what kind of person, Ya Rasulullah, should I make my best friend? The Prophet responds that whoever helps you remember Allah, that would be somebody you should make your best friend. Especially if they remind you about Allah when you forget about Him. Nowadays, the reason you and I, the way that we pick our friends, what's the criteria? Oh, this person has the same taste in music that I do. Oh, they have the same taste in movies that I do. We happen to like the same hobbies, right? We're both into, let's say, sports. That's why they're my best friend. Oh, we think alike. We're on the same wavelength. That's why we're best friends. We live in the same neighborhood. We played together. That's it. Again, within Islam, these things are not the criteria. The criteria, as said by Allah, passed down through the Ahlul Bayt, is what? Is a real friend should be taking you closer to Allah. If you've got a real confidant and friend, a real close person that doesn't help you gain spiritually, that person can only then be a spiritual detriment to you. Now, some of you may say, Hassan, does that mean we can't have non-Muslims as friends? Does that mean we can't take irreligious people as friends? No, I'm not saying that at all. No, please don't twist the words. If you want to have a general acquaintance and a friendly relationship with individuals, again, of different faiths or irreligious Muslims, fine, go ahead. Nothing wrong with that. Again, be friendly with people, of course. It's about who do you confide to? Who do you confide in? Who do you seek advice from? Look at the analogy that they give in the business world. If you have a startup company, you're a fresh up and coming entrepreneur, and you want to start, let's say some app and a website, some sort of service. Now, you can surround yourself with friends who, again, share your love of success, but maybe their interests lie, again, only in about music and movies and favorite color, random stuff like that, favorite food. Maybe those are the only things you share in common. Would hanging around those individuals make you a more successful business person? Absolutely not. Any business guru will tell you that if you want to be successful, you need to hang out with people and surround yourself with entrepreneurs or successful business people who are much more successful than you. You're role models, right? But unfortunately, you and I we very rarely do that when it comes to our spirituality. If I see somebody with great akhlaq, who's very well educated in terms of Islam, that's somebody that should be my best friend. Because when I go and ask them for advice and say, you know what, hey Ali, I got invited to a coworker's house, and they're really nice to me at work. They invited me over, but I'm pretty sure because they are non-Muslim, they're gonna have drinks there. There's gonna be music, parties. It's gonna be a party. So I'm not sure what to do. I don't want to be rude to the person, but I just don't know what to do. Now, if this person that you're confiding in, if they don't have an Islamic background, if they don't understand the ahkam, if they don't have the same proper framework that you and I should have about thinking about Islam first, about Allah first, about pleasing Allah first, then they're going to give you an answer which is going to be usually, baseless. They'll say, yeah, make the person happy. Do whatever makes you happy. Something weak and superficial like that. A true confidant, a true friend will tell you, look, you know the rules. Allah says that if you're going to a place where they're going to be openly doing this stuff, is that really a place that you want to be? Would you be happy there? And would you be okay if the imam at the time saw you in a place like that? No, you can kindly tell the person that, I'm sorry. You would say, I don't want to go to such an environment. You could say, no, sorry, I can't make it. Or maybe you can say, look, I'm not comfortable with people drinking. I'm not comfortable with certain types of music or mixed gatherings or this. And if the person really understands, then fine. If that person judges you, that coworker says, ugh, you're ridiculous and you're such an extremist, well, guess what? That means they were never really a close person, a person that you should have gotten close to in the beginning. They've just revealed their true nature. And that's better off for you. These are the qualities that we need to be thinking about. And this is why in another narration we see that the Prophet has said, a good friend is better than solitude. All right? It's better to have somebody who's a good real friend who can help you get closer to Allah. That's better than being by yourself. But then he continues, but solitude is better than mingling with corrupt, bad, and evil people. Especially nowadays, it's tough. We want to socialize. We want to be around other people, whether we're extroverts or introverts. We need that socialization, that social part of us. We're social beings. But if we hang around the wrong crowd, whether we're young or old, whether they're family or friends, co-workers or classmates, whatever bad characteristics they have will definitely rub off on us, whether we like it or not. If they use language which is inappropriate, it's going to affect us. It's going to affect us spiritually. If they speak about ungodly things, that's going to affect our soul. That's why we even see, for example, that when the Prophet was around individuals and the gathering, there was, some spiritually impure things going on. When the Prophet would get up, they say that some narrations say he would do istighfar 70 times to remove that spiritual kind of secondhand impurity from him. So we have to be very, very careful, mu'mineen, mu'minat. Who do you really associate yourself with? Who is giving you these advices? So the first factor was what? The first factor that affects and caused our identity loss was our upbringing or the way that we raise our children. Tarbiyah, parenting, nurturing. The second factor is those whom we associate with, our friends and our family. Those who don't take us towards Allah will naturally make us forget about Allah. So these are the first two things we need to keep in mind. One more narration about this point, and then we will go on to our next. And this is a hadith. This was in that famous narration of Imam Ali alayhi salam giving advice to his son Imam Hassan alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. He says, do not be friends with a fool, Because when he will try to do something good for you, he will do you harm. And that's what happens, isn't it? Even if somebody has the right intention, but they don't know the reality of the world, they don't understand Islam, they don't know what God wants, then they will try to make you feel better and they'll think what they're giving you is good advice, but in actuality, it's going to damage our souls. We have to be very, very careful. Then he continues, don't make a miser, a cheap, stingy person your friend. Why? Because he will run away from you at the time of your dire need. Don't be friendly with a vicious and wicked person, because he will sell you and your friendship at the cheapest price. And do not make friends with a liar, because like a mirage, he will make you visualize something, the things that are very near, he'll make you think that it's at a distance, and the things that are far away and at a distance, they'll make you think they are very, very near. So, to summarize this narration, don't be friends with ignorant, foolish people who don't know what they're talking about. Don't make friends with people who are cheap and stingy. Don't make friends with people who have bad akhlaq, who are very vicious and wicked and evil. Do not make friends with liars. These are qualities that we have to look out and be very, very careful of when we are forming our friendships. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Hopefully now, what we've understood is the idea of identity loss, why we've lost it, and what are the factors. Now, hopefully we can understand that, okay, if maybe you agree that we've lost our identity, we are sinning, we need to reclaim our true identity of obeying Allah and doing only what He wants and treating everything else as secondary. Okay, now the question is, how do we reclaim our true identity? How do we get it back? This is what we will start on tomorrow, inshallah. What I would like for you to think about with your friends and family is this. How, if you know that you lost something, if you know that we have these issues within our faith, we are having this crisis of faith, crisis of iman, crisis of identity, what can we do to fix it? Besides rectifying the two factors that we mentioned before about choosing your parenting style appropriately, or making up for maybe not being raised Islamically, and of course choosing your friends wisely and who you associate with. What else do you think for our own individual self right now? What can we start doing to improve our spirituality? So please discuss that. And think about what sort of love maybe that you and I have, which may be holding us down. What things what are we enamored with and in love with, which keeps us sinning over and over again? And maybe there's some doubts in our mind that might be leading to us getting stuck in a framework and in this vicious cycle of sinning and forgetting about God over and over and over again. So think about that, inshallah, and we will continue tomorrow night. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala. So on the previous nights, we've mentioned how Imam Hussein alayhi salam had moved from Medina to Karbala. We talked about how the Imam arrived in Karbala and what took place there with his conversation with Banu Asad. Tonight, we want to take a step back and we want to look at what happened when Imam Hussein was making his way towards Kufa and was taken by Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi and then forced to Karbala. So tonight we recite the Masa'ib in honor of this great companion who made the right decision at the final moment, Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi. When Hussein alayhi salam was stopped by Hur on the outskirts of Kufa, he told Hur, Ya Hur, I've been invited by the people of Kufa, and that's what I'm doing. I'm going there to see them. As Imam starts to go and move away from Hur, Hur takes the reins of Imam's horse and stops him from going. This is a very, very kind of bold move on Hur's part. And he says to Imam Hussein, Ya Hussein, I cannot let you go to Kufa. And now, that famous line comes here. This famous conversation, which causes the heart to tremble. When Hur says this to our Imam, how does Imam Hussein respond? You and I are normally used to hearing the Imams, the Prophets, always responding with love and kindness and mercy and compassion. But here, look at the words that Hussein chooses. He says, Ya Hur, may your mother weep for you. Now, we hear this translation, and most of us don't know Arabic, so the Arabic doesn't make sense to us. But I want you to understand that this is a huge statement. In a sense, Imam is saying, you are such a disgusting individual. You are so terrible that your mother would cry over you. Your mother should cry over you because of how terrible you are. Or in another way, it's better if you die, Hur, so that your mother can cry over you. This is a very powerful, strong statement. Very aggressive statement from the Imam, which you and I are not used to hearing. But Imam sees something in Hur. And he's, in a sense, perhaps even testing Hur's akhlaq and testing his real identity. And this is now a place for Hur to choose. Hur can decide to respond to the Imam in the exact same way, or he can choose to, instead of rationalizing insulting behavior, he can focus on his true identity and respond to the Imam in the way that he did. So how does Hur respond? Hur says, Ya Aba Abdullah, if your mother had been anyone other than Fatima, I would have said the same thing to you. But what can I say when she is the daughter of Rasulullah? What can I say? You are the son of you are the son of the daughter of Rasulullah. What can I say to you? This shows Hur's akhlaq. This shows his true identity, his true nature. He just got caught up in the wrong circumstance. And we see this all the way up until the morning of Ashura. At that morning, we see Hur is facing this identity crisis, just as you and I do every single day. He's pacing back and forth. And his companions, his close ones, can see the restlessness on his face. They can see the stress and anxiety. And someone says, Ya Hur, if anybody were to ask me who is the bravest commander in the army, I would have answered you. But I see you right now, and I see that this small army of 72 individuals, of women and children, is causing you stress and anxiety. I don't understand what's going on. Why are you like this? How are you afraid of them? Hur takes this person. He says, I want to show you something. Come with me. He takes them just outside the tents, within earshot of the tents of the Ahlul Bayt, of the followers of Imam Hussein. He says to the companion, he says, do you hear something? He says, yes, I hear. Tell me, what do you hear? He says, Ya Hur, I hear young children crying, Al-Atash, 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 that they're crying of thirst. They're thirsty. Hur says, this is what's bothering me. This is what's causing me anxiety. This is what's breaking my heart right now. This is what disturbs me. I see myself between heaven and hell. And he knows that heaven is towards Hussein and hell is with Umar ibn Sa'ad and Yazid and Ibn Ziyad. Hur couldn't stand the cries of the children. He makes the right decision. He goes towards his true identity as a follower of Imam. He takes his servant, he takes his brother, his son, and he begins heading towards the camp of Hussein. And on the other side, we know that Hussein was waiting for. He knew that Hur would be returning to him. He tells his brother, Ya Abbas, get ready, we have a guest coming to visit us now from the other side. We see now the other side, Hur is coming closer and closer to the tents of Hussein. He tells his servant, he says, please tie my hands together. Put a blindfold over my eyes because I am ashamed to go to Imam Hussein like a free person. I should come to him like a captive. I should come to him like a prisoner. When Hur comes in front of the Imam, he throws himself off of his horse to the feet of the Imam and begins pleading and crying, Ya Aba Abdullah, I'm the one who stopped you from returning to Medina. Ya Aba Abdullah, I am the sinner who stopped you from going to Kufa. Ya Aba Abdullah, I'm the one who put my hands on the rein of your horse. I'm the one who's causing this thirst and the cries of your children. Is there any way you can look into your heart and forgive me? And this now, when Hussein hears these words, he lifted up Hur. He takes off that blindfold. He unties his hands. He embraces him. He says, Ya Hur anta maghfur. You're forgiven. This is the love the ultimate, absolute, infinite love that manifests through the Ahlul Bayt that you and I need to learn, brothers and sisters. After Uhud gets the forgiveness from Imam Hussein, he knows he's not finished yet. He has a few other steps left. He says, Ya Aba Abdullah, Ya Mawla, please give me permission to speak to the women. Hur then goes to and he sends his salams to the Ahlul Bayt, the women of the household of the Prophet. He says, I am Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi. I'm the one who's the cause of all your troubles here. The reason your children are crying, I'm the reason for that. Hussein has forgiven me, but please, I would like for you to forgive me as well. And the women begin crying and crying. And they say, Ya Hur, of course, we forgive you as well. You're free to go now. Go back to Hussein. But Hur has one more person to talk to directly. He's gone through Hussein and he's been purified through the forgiveness and love of Hussein. He's talked to the women of the Ahlul Bayt and has been purified and forgiven by them. But now he needs to go to the daughter of Fatima. He says, I need to speak to Zainab. He calls Zainab. Zainab comes to him and says, Ya Hur, what do you need from me? You've already been forgiven. He says, I know, but I need you to make me a promise. Zainab says, Ya Hur, what do you want from me? He says, please promise me that on the day of judgment, when you go in front of your mother Fatima, that you won't complain to her about what I did here. Please don't complain to Fatima about what I've done to you and to her children and to her grandchildren. Zainab assures him, Ya Hur, we will not complain to Zahra. Now Hur is ready to go. He comes out on the battlefield. He gets permission from the Imam. He says, please let me go and sacrifice myself for you. He goes out. He fights valiantly. He falls down on the battlefield. And towards the last few moments of his life, he calls out, Assalamu alayka, Ya Aba Abdullah. He sends his final salams. Imam Hussein runs to him. He's holding Hur in his lap. And he's removing the blood from Hur's face. And he begins to say to Hur, he says, Ya Hur, bakhin laka, Ya Hur. Congratulations, Hur. Anta Hur fi dunya wal akhirah. You are now free in this dunya, in this world, and the next world. على لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره. Ya Allah, we ask you by the right of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, please accept this azah, the mourning, the cries, the tears we shed, our poetry, everything we do for your love, for the love of the Ahlul Bayt, in order to improve ourselves. Ya Allah, please accept this from us. Allah, please bless all of those who are a part of these programs. Ya Allah, by the right of Hur, by the status that you have given him, please help us become free in this world and the next, to disconnect ourselves from materialistic desires, to help us break away from the bondage of false ideas within the materialistic realm, and help us connect to you and only to you, so that we can follow in the footsteps of your chosen ones, the Ahlul Bayt, alayhimus salatu wassalam. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala Ahl Bayt Tayyibin Tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Matam Hussein.
Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein,
हुर जरा पहचान मुझको, बोलता कुरान हूँ मैं. हुर जरा पहचान मुझको, बोलता कुरान हूँ मैं. मर्ज़ी-ए रब्बे जली हूँ, मर्ज़ी-ए रब्बे जली हूँ. दर्द का सुल्तान हूँ मैं. और जरा पहचान मुझको, बोलता कुरान हूँ मैं. और जरा पहचान मुझको, बोलता कुरान हूँ मैं. मैं हुसैन इब्ने अली हूँ, मालिके खुल्दे बरी हूँ. मुट्ठी में दरिया है मेरे, फितरतन प्यासा नहीं हूँ. और मेरे सीने से लग जा, और मेरे सीने से लग जा. आज का मेहमान हूँ मैं. और जरा पहचान मुझको, بولتا قرآن ہوں میں، اور ذرا پہچان مجھ کو، بولتا قرآن ہوں میں۔ سر میرا نیزے پہ ہوگا، ساتھ میں چادر بھی ہوگی، بالوں کا پردہ بنائے اون کی مادر بھی ہوگی۔ مجھ پہ ہے احسان زینب، مجھ پہ ہے احسان زینب، دین پہ احسان ہوں میں، اور ذرا پہچان مجھ کو، بولتا قرآن ہوں میں، اور ذرا پہچان مجھ کو، بولتا قرآن ہوں میں۔ جنگ ہوتی گر گوارا بھیجتا عباس کو میں، کچھ نہ رہتا کربلا میں، ختم کرتا پیاس کو میں۔ حق و باطل کی لڑائی، حق و باطل کی لڑائی میں بھی ایک میزان ہوں میں، اور ذرا پہچان مجھ کو، بولتا قرآن ہوں میں، اور ذرا پہچان مجھ کو، بولتا قرآن ہوں میں۔ تو میرے بچپن کا وعدہ مانگا ہے تجھ کو خدا سے، تیرا آنا کربلا میں لکھا ہے میری رضا سے۔ تو 72 میں ہے شامل، تو 72 میں ہے شامل، اور تیری پہچان ہوں میں، اور ذرا پہچان مجھ کو، بولتا قرآن ہوں میں، اور ذرا پہچان مجھ کو، بولتا قرآن ہوں میں۔ نعمتیں رب العلا کی، رب کعبہ کی قسم، دو جہانوں میں ہے ہم سے شافی محشر ہیں ہم۔ دیکھ لے تفسیر جا کر، دیکھ لے تفسیر جا کر، سورہ رحمان ہوں میں، اور ذرا پہچان مجھ کو، بولتا قرآن ہوں میں، اور ذرا پہچان مجھ کو، بولتا قرآن ہوں میں۔ میری چوکھٹ پہ فرشتے آ کے کرتے ہیں سلام، انبیاء آتے ہیں سارے میرے در پہ صبح و شام۔ واقف راز خدا ہوں، واقف راز خدا ہوں، کبریا کا ایمان ہوں میں، اور ذرا پہچان مجھ کو، بولتا قرآن ہوں میں، اور ذرا پہچان مجھ کو، بولتا قرآن ہوں میں۔ کربلا کی سرزمین پہ وقت وہ بھی آئے گا، دیکھ کر میری غریبی آسماں تھر آئے گا۔ آسماں والے کہیں گے، آسماں والے کہیں گے، درد کا عنوان ہوں میں، اور ذرا پہچان مجھ کو، بولتا قرآن ہوں میں، اور ذرا پہچان مجھ کو، بولتا قرآن ہوں میں۔ کفر کے رستے چلا تھا، آب کوثر مل گیا، رات میں شاہ روز ہر کو روز محشر مل گیا۔ ہر की क्या तकदीर बदली, हुर की क्या तकदीर बदली, आज भी हैरान हूँ मैं, हुर जरा पहचान मुझको, बोलता कुरान हूँ मैं, हुर जरा पहचान मुझको, बोलता कुरान हूँ मैं। मर्ज़िए रब्बे जली हूँ, मर्ज़िए रब्बे जली हूँ, दर्द का सुल्तान हूँ मैं, हुर जरा पहचान मुझको, बोलता कुरान हूँ मैं, हुर जरा पहचान मुझको, बोलता कुरान हूँ मैं। या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन।
और मोहम्मद व आल मोहम्मद सलावत अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद व आल मुहम्मद। सूरह अल-फातिहा। बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम। अल्हम्दुलिल्लाहि रब्बिल आलमीन। अर्रहमानिर रहीम। मालिकि यौमिद्दीन। इय्याका नअबुदु व इय्याका नस्तईन। इहदिनास सिरातल मुस्तकीम। सिरातल लज़ीना अनअमता अलैहिम गhayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Sisters and brothers, it's time for Adhan. We'll turn our attention to the Adhan for Maghrib.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن مولانا أمير المؤمنين عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن مولانا أمير المؤمنين عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، حي على الفلاح، حي على خير العمل، حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد 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 بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم استغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه استغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه استغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والنجاة من النار ومن كل بلية والفوز بالجنة ورضوان في دار السلام وجوار نبيك محمد عليه وآله السلام اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد 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 بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم استغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه استغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه استغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم إنه ليس لعلم بموضع رزقي وإنما أطلبه بخطرات تخطر على قلبي فأجول في طلبه البلدان فأنا فيما أنا طالب كالحيران لا أدري في سحل هو أم في جبل أم في أرض أم في سماء أم في بر أم في بحر وعلى يدي من ومن قبل من وقد علمت أن علمه عندك وأسبابه بيدك وأنت الذي تقسمه بلطفك وتسببه برحمتك اللهم صل على محمد وآله واجعل يا ربي رزقك لي واسعا ومطلبه سهلا وما أخذه قريبا ولا تؤنني بطلب ما لم تقدر لي فيه رزقا فإنك غني عن عذابي وأنا فقير إلى رحمتك وصل على محمد وآله وجد على عبدك بفضلك إنك ذو فضل عظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, all praise belongs to you, our Lord, Lord of the worlds. We ask you to increase your peace and blessings upon our Prophet and upon his family and friends millions of times. O Lord, despite this great storm, we thank you for the much needed slowdown. We thank you for the chance to take stock of our lives and finally attend to matters that we had delayed for so long. And we thank you for the newfound appreciation we have for your infinite blessings. O Lord, though we are grateful, we feel like powerless ships drifting into uncharted waters. Borders are closed and planes are grounded. Shops are shuttered and town centers are deserted. Our livelihoods have diminished and we can no longer spend or consume as we like. We can't even leave our homes to visit loved ones, some of whom we may never see again. Your houses are closed and there is no pilgrimage. O Lord, none of us know where all of this is heading, and so we turn to you, admitting our helplessness and fear. We beg you to help us weather this storm in the best of ways, and to please grant us all the good that it contains, and all the good that hides behind it, and to make the journey as smooth as possible. Multiply our positivity and resilience, help us be proactive and productive, and inspire us with creative solutions to the extraordinary challenges we face. Fill us with patience and self-control, gratitude and generosity, and deep compassion towards one another. Fill our homes and neighborhoods with peace, happiness, and grace, and make this the means of unity that humanity so desperately needs. Help us keep our bodies, souls, and minds as fit and healthy as possible. Protect us from infection and from any other illness or accident that would need medical help. Protect us from debt, unemployment, and bankruptcy. And protect us from the many other harms that this storm contains and the harms which hide behind it. And whatever challenges you may place ahead of us, help us to overcome them and give us trust in your wisdom. O Lord, though we don't know where our ships will land, we ask you to help us exit from this storm better, stronger, and closer to you than when it began, and that you navigate us to a new normal that is far better than the one we left behind, and that you never allow us to forget the lessons we learned along the way. O Lord, grant all of this not just to us, but to our loved ones, our neighbors, our friends, our brothers and sisters throughout the world, and all humanity. O Lord, grant a fast recovery to those who are ill and a safe return to loved ones kept apart. Take special care of the old and vulnerable and those who are mentally unwell. Grant a special solace to those who are living alone, those who are dying alone, and those whose loved ones pass away. Grant a special patience to young children and the adults who are raising them, and grant a special mercy to those who are now locked up with mean, selfish, or abusive people. Grant a special grace to the frontline workers and volunteers upon whom so many depend, especially those who risk their own health to care for ours. And grant a special aid to the needy, to those with few resources, to those struggling to make ends meet, to those working under great pressure, and to those who are striving to make the world a better place. And we especially ask you to please compel our leaders to do what's best for us all. O Lord, you've promised to answer our calls, and you never break your promises, and you are the most generous of those who show generosity. So please answer our call in the most generous of ways, and keep us consistent in making it until we reach safety. And in closing, we ask you to increase your peace and blessings upon our Prophet and upon his family and friends millions of times, and all praise belongs to you. Ameen.
أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ 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 أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا سيدي يا مولاي يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا سيدي يا مولاي يا نبي الله. السلام عليك يا سيدي يا مولاي يا محمد بن عبد الله ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا رسول الله وعلى ابن عمك أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب وصي رسول رب العالمين. السلام عليك يا رسول الله وعلى بضعتك الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا رسول الله وعلى زوجتك الوفية الغراء خديجة الكبرى أم المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا رسول الله وعلى ولديك عليك الإمامين الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. السلام عليك يا رسول الله وعلى أئمة المسلمين من ذرية ولدك الحسين علي السجاد ومحمد الباقر وجعفر الصادق وموسى الكاظم وعلي الرضا ومحمد الجواد وعلي الهادي والحسن العسكري والحجة ابن الحسن المهدي. السلام عليك يا صاحب الزمان عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك وجعلنا الله من أنصارك وأعوانك والمستشهدين بين يديك. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Brothers and sisters, this brings us to the end of our program this evening. As you can see, I've got my beautiful grandchildren. We all want to say Khudafiz, Fi Amanillah, and see you inshallah tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Say bye bye to everybody. Bye bye. Khudafiz. 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 Khudafiz.